Hey everybody, so today we're going to be going through how to separate your image into many different layers so you can do a reduction linocut print. So let's get into it. So I have my image here saved to my desktop. It's already black and white. We're going to be just showing how to separate into different layers of gray. We're going to have 4 layers for this print. So we're going to have a black, a dark gray, a light gray, and a white. And what we need to do is we need to have them separated into layers almost kind of like this. Now I already have it finished, so I'll show you a little bit how it looks. So this would be my black layer, my gray layer, and my light gray layer, right? So you can kind of maybe see a little bit how I could layer these up. I would, and eventually be printing smaller and smaller pieces of my linocut slab. So I would get a nice full image on it. And we'll kind of look at what that might look like at the end of it. But first I need to start with my unseparated image here, and I need to open it up in Photoshop. Now this is the good stage of where you can go through and you can crop it, you can make it black and white. Now I'm using Windows, maybe a lot of you guys are using Mac out there. There's probably some sort of photo editor you can use, really simple tools like turning black and white and cropping. I like to do that kind of stuff before I get into Photoshop because it doesn't, I'd rather avoid the complication of Photoshop where I can. But what I basically did was I went through, I have a cropping tool here, I can make it smaller or bigger, and then I have my little settings, and some things like saturation, you turn it all the way down, and that'll turn it to just a simple black and white. Now there's lots of different ways to turn an image black and white, but that's a really simple, really quick and clean way to do it. So I've already done that here, so I'm not going to be saving that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to open this in Photoshop. So you can drag it into Photoshop while opening in that program. Maybe I'll just do that to show you how it works. Dragging it into Photoshop will just automatically open it up, and it'll have the right size of the sort of picture plane you're working with. First, I'm going to posterize it. So if you look under the side here, where it says Properties, Adjustments, I'm going to scroll down to where it has Posterize. It has these, sort of stripiness here. This will reduce the image onto just a couple colors or layers or shades of gray, right? So if you click it, you can see already, okay, it's reduced it by how many layers is highlighted here. So if I just do 2 layers, it's just going to give me white and black. If I do 3 or 4 or 5, 6, obviously a lot of layers, it kind of just defeats the purpose of posterizing it at all, right? So what we're going to do is, at this point, we're going to decide how detailed and how many layers I want my print to be. Now, I'm going to go with 4. If you want to go with 3, that's fine. But I'm going to go with 4 because I like to challenge myself. But this is already kind of a challenging image, so maybe 3 might be a better choice if you're kind of a little hesitant on this process, right? Maybe work a little slower on your art making practice. Maybe just 3 is okay. So I'm going to hit enter. That's okay. Now what I want to do is go over here to this layers section. And as we do stuff in Photoshop, as we add adjustments, as we add things on top of it, we add these sort of adjustment layers, right? Now, the more you do, the more complicated it can get. And sometimes you can get to the point where you're editing things on an adjustment layer when you really want to edit it on the actual image. So for this process, I'm just going to say we're going to hold shift. So select both of these. And I think it might either be command click or control click. I'm going to right click on my mouse and I'm going to merge layers, right? So what that's going to do is it's going to make it so the base background layer is posterized, right? Just makes it easier for me, right? Now, this image is taken with film, so it's really grainy. You can see all these little bits of dust, and it kind of looks like sand a little bit in the background, right? Sort of nice film grain, right? Could be good for some purposes. Really great for just raw photography if you're just going to put a photo out there in the world. But for this process, I don't want grain. Remember, I'm going to be carving around these little details out of linoleum. There's no way I'm going to get all these grainy details. There's no way it's going to look good in the final product. So I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to go to Filter Gallery. And here is the Cutout Filter. So this is going to allow it, so it gives me some options here, right? It gives you a zoom in on a certain part of your image. You can click around and show it what you want, but I can make the edges more simple. Now, the more simple the edges are, maybe the easier it will be to carve out. but then we are going to lose some detail over here, right? I'm actually holding Alt and zooming out, but you can zoom out from here if you want to see the more whole image. Edge simplicity can get really detailed, right? So at this point, I can't even tell what's going on. Even though it might be simpler to cut out this way, it's not really what I want. So I'm going to go ahead with, I think, an edge simplicity of 3, maybe 4. I'm going to go with an edge simplicity of 3, and then edge fidelity can help you sort of, yeah, it doesn't really matter much on my image right here, so I'm just going to leave it in the middle. Number of levels, I'm going to keep that the same as my posterization, because if I go below, it kind of just messes with what was already there. So if I have 4 levels, I'm going to keep the number of levels the same. So this looks good. I'm going to hit OK. Now, filters don't actually create another layer here. It just edits what you're currently working on, right? So now, more or less, this is what my final print will look like if I print it out perfectly. So now we need to basically get to the point where we separate all the layers into different images. So I can print them out, I can put them over what I'm working on, and that'll be what I'm working with, right? So what we need to do with that is we go over here and we go to select, and then we do color range. Now this tool allows me to select all the same color in an image. We need to select the black, the dark gray, and the light gray layer for that top light gray layer, right? So that's going to be what I'm carving out first, the light gray. Because if you think about it, I'm carving out the least amount for my first print, then I'm going to carve more, print again, and more, and then that's my final print. So I need to carve out basically all the white area from the linoleum slab first, so that's left white in my final print. So that means I can't just select one color, I have to select all 3 of these sort of shades of gray first. So first I'm going to click the black, then I'm going to hold shift. Now you'll see here that the little plus has appeared next to the eyedropper icon. I'm going to click somewhere that's the dark gray, and then I'm going to click somewhere that's the light gray. So now I have the black, the dark gray, and the light gray all selected in my image. Then I'm going to hit OK. So you'll see here, all these areas of white are sort of left unselected and everything else is selected. Then I'm going to right click and I'm going to layer via copy. So again, if you're on Mac, I believe it might be command click or it might be option click, but you will know the one that brings up the little menu like this. So if you see point, sample, yada, yada, right, go to layer via copy. So you'll see here, down here, under layer 1, it's created a new layer, right? These eye little toggles let you see different layers, right? So if I remove all of them, it shows me the transparent background, that white and gray checker. If I show just that layer, it shows that the transparent part is, the white area is now transparent, right? As we move forward, next, the light gray part will be transparent, and then the dark gray part will be transparent. So we'll get those layers on, and then when we export this to images, it'll make more sense. So now I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to make sure, this is a really common mistake in Photoshop, that I'm working with the right layer. You see here that there's a layer 1 and there's a background. If I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff I think I'm doing on layer 1 and it's on the background selected, things will be, it won't be quite right. I won't be doing the same work, right? Even though you're seeing different layers, that doesn't necessarily mean you're working on the layer that you're seeing. So I'm going to make sure that I'm selected layer 1. I'm looking at layer 1. And I go to the select tool, color range. I'm going to do the same thing. Click black, click dark gray, click light gray. And then I'm going to fill. So I'm going to make this all that light gray color. So go to edit, I'm going to fill, and because I selected the light gray last, it's already selected as my foreground color, so I can just hit OK. Right? So then I can again left click, or I can go to select and then deselect. That's going to be what my first layer looks like. I'm going to be printing this out, I'm going to be tracing it onto my linoleum slab, and I'll be cutting out around these lines for my first layer. Right? So we're going to do this as many times as we have layers. So now I'm going to deselect this, go back to my background color and do it again. So just to show the process again, select, color range, click the black, then again hold shift, click the dark gray, but I'm not going to click the light gray this time. I'm going to hit OK, go to, maybe I can do from here. No, I'm going to do right click, layer via copy. Hide this part. So now the light grays are gone. It's just the black and the dark gray. Select color range, black, hold shift, dark gray, hit OK. Again, making sure my layer 2 is covered. I'm going to go to edit, fill, and again that dark gray is selected in my foreground color. I'm going to hit OK. Select, deselect. Okay, so you see here I have two different layers, right? So there's different levels of detail here. And we can actually eventually, we can reorder these to show the layers again. It'll kind of make it look like this layer again. But we're going to do it one final time, just for the black. Now this was the easiest one. Select, color range, just click the black, hit OK, layer via copy. And I don't have to do anything to that layer because it's just black, right? Now, something I've kind of noticed, and maybe you've noticed too in yours, is you sometimes have different parts of layers that are like half gray. You know, you can kind of see here that there's some like lighter gray stuff in here. Again, this is just a really good guideline. The little bits and pieces here are not so important. And when you're doing printmaking, you know, sometimes for little details, you can actually just paint it on, right? So we don't have to completely make our linoleum slabs perfect. But if we actually sort of arrange layers here, and it's not necessary, you don't have to do this part, but you can see if we add in details, that's kind of what our print is going to end up looking like. So what we're going to do is we need to save each of these layers as separate images so I can print them separately. Okay, now I'm going to go to layer 1, have that selected here, put it back in the original order just so it looks the same. Layer 1, I'm going to go to File, Save as a Copy. So save a copy. It's going to give me options to save it. So I'm going to make a new folder or whatever case so that it's all organized. I'm just going to hit layers 1 because I already did this before, so I'm just doing it again for the video. I'm going to save it there, and I'm going to save it as a JPEG. So saving it as a JPEG means that all of these gray and white squares will come out as white. PNG keeps it transparent. Now when you're printing it might just be the same, but just to be sure that that turns out white, I'm going to save it as a JPEG. Make sure it's saved there. I'm going to call it layer 1. I'm going to call it layer 1. Hit save. It's going to give me some options here. I'm just going to click OK. Right? So for each of these layers, I'm going to make sure that it's selected, it's being shown with a little eye there. File, save as a copy, go back to my original folder, layer 2, JPEG, save, OK. Same with the final layer here. Make sure viewing selected, file, save a copy, same folder, layer 3, save. So that's it. Now I can go back to my folder here, and you can kind of see that I have my black layer, everything else is white. And again, some of you might have this little light gray, but we can just ignore that, right? I've kind of worked through it a couple of times, not quite sure how to get rid of it, but in the end, it's a guideline for us, so we have the choice as artists to ignore, you know, errors in the process. The second layer that I'll be cutting out, the first layer I'll be cutting out, and of course the final black layer. So it's all right here. Now I can print this off and have a guideline for what I'm working with.